so scared.
What if your neighbor waved before you even moved? What if a package on your doormat said your name back to you? Or the walls started breathing in your rhythm? Some stories aren't true, but they behave like they are, and that's when they're dangerous. Welcome back to Whispering Abyss. Tonight I'm opening 5 doors you probably walked past. A hallway where a man only survives by walking backward. A box that delivers your voice instead of what's inside. Thin walls that teach your lungs to follow, an HOA president who never blinks because something else would see, and a window across the courtyard where my double rehearses my life. These are slow-burn, first-person neighbor horrors designed for headphones and the hour when the building gets quiet. No gore, no real cases, just rules, reflections, and the kind of timing that knocks at 3:33. Before we step inside, tell me this. Which neighbor would you move away from first? Backward walker, the package, the breathing wall, never blink or 4C. Drop your pick in the comments, and keep your face turned the right way. Story 1. The neighbor who walks backward after midnight. I woke to the soft shuffle of socks and saw my neighbor drift backward past my peephole, gliding like the hallway was a mouth closing behind him. Swallowing sound. The air had that wet rust smell old buildings exhale after midnight. Fluorescent lights hummed as if bees lived in the tubes. The exit sign bled red onto the carpet. Moths touched it when I looked away and vanished when I checked again. Somewhere the fire sprinklers hissed a low rehearsal, not yet spraying. The placard on 302 hung crooked, so the numbers read like 203 in the glass at the hallway bend. His wristwatch ticked the wrong way, a tiny river flowing uphill. I lay still and asked what chases a man who never turns to look. By day, the building seemed ordinary. I edit sound from home, and the quiet sold me. I stacked contracts like little bricks. Anything that pays rent. I needed rest to finish a documentary mix before Monday, or the client would move on. My flaw is simple. I notice patterns in noise. Fridges breathing wrong. Pipes whispering in 4-beat loops. I collected with my handheld recorder, then wish I had not. This place lulled me at noon, white-woven silence. So I signed a month-to-month for a discount. My late aunt's rug fit the floor like it had been cut for it, which felt like permission. I mounted a door camera and promised I would record 1 full pass after midnight to satisfy my nerves. If the neighbor did some sleepwalk routine, the footage would show it, and I could stop caring. The first night I watched static snow and a fog of moth wings. The second night, I heard a whisper through the door, like someone tested my name in reverse. I told myself it might caught plumbing, a pipe lisping consonants, but my name ended on a question mark I could feel in my teeth. The third night the disturbance arrived clean and denial got thin. At 12:03 the sprinklers breathed warm and the hum of the fluorescents rose half a step. The man from 3B appeared at the L-shaped bend and began his backward drift. He raised his left hand, fingers spread, pushing against air that flexed around him like cling film. Behind me, not in front of me, moths gathered on the glass by the stairwell window, powders turning his shadow to a face-shaped blur. His watch ticked down like a countdown, but the numbers moved the wrong way, and I felt time tilt. On the cheap shelf by the mailboxes lay a face-down hand mirror. I had noticed it the last 2 days and assumed someone forgot it. Tonight, I tilted it a fraction to catch the bend. The reflected 302 looked perfect. My door looked almost right. The corridor seemed deeper in the glass, like a throat with its own weather. The neighbor reached the corner seam where light changes tone and did not step into it. He hovered there. That is when I saw the oddest thing. When the sprinklers clicked harder at 12:07, his socks did not darken at all. I posted a clip to the building group chat. with a shrug caption. People replied with gifs of sleepwalkers and jokes about melatonin. Then an older tenant sent a private message. She wrote, "Never let your face the bend after midnight. Use your back. Use your phone as a mirror if you must." I asked her to explain. She replied, "You found the time. Keep your eyes, but not your face." Before I could answer, the message bubble dimmed and disappeared, like she had snatched it back. The chat pinged with a false fire alarm, then returned to memes as if nothing had happened. A thumbprint slid down the interior of the window glass with a soft squeak. Not mine. That has a way of changing your plans. I slept on the couch with the hallway light haloing the peephole. At 10 a.m., a notice appeared under every door about a possible carbon monoxide leak. It explained dizziness and sleepwalking and requested tenants keep windows cracked at night. My head did hurt. I got lightheaded around midnight. The neighbor's strange walk could be a symptom. He carried a little CO detector sometimes, the kind you wave like a wand. I wanted the theory. I begged for it to be true. Seeing my own chin from the hallway angle spike something old and animal, I jammed the door camera to the peephole and set my handheld recorder on the rug. At 11:58, the power dipped and crawled back, like something heavy had sat on the wires. Battery percentages fell as if dropped down a stairwell. The backward man turned the corner and began toward my door with slow, practiced control, a swimmer moving through syrup. The mirror on the mailbox tilted itself a hair. It caught the frame of my mouth and froze it open. In the glass by the stairwell, moths knit themselves into a figure leaning near my cheek, waiting. A soft knock tapped the wood at knee height. 3 knocks, then 1, as the wall clock clicked 12:07. I opened the door because I am human, and fools are still human. I wanted control over one thing. I cracked the door and caught the man's profile, not his face. He kept his back to me, chin lifted away as if giving his throat to the ceiling. "Do you want it?" he whispered, "or do you want to keep your face?" The question landed like a key wrong for the lock. The group chat went silent, as if our building moved under a cloud. I asked him what it wanted. He said, "Not names, faces. The thing learns your face, not your story. Keep your face pointed anywhere but toward the bend until the water moves again. Running water slows it. Time around it runs like a drain. That is all I know." I held up the mirror. It showed the bend as a dark throat and my mouth in the lower corner. Open a fraction, as if I had already started to scream later. It felt like I had walked into an old rule that other people had obeyed, so long it became furniture. The detector theory still gnawed at me. It would be such a relief to file this under gas and human error, and my tendency to find rhythm where there is none. The neighbor's little meter blinked but made no alarm. I fetched my own borrowed CO meter and filmed the hallway. The reading held steady at 0, while the door camera captured the same backward shuffle from the same distance as last night. The false pattern fell away like wet paper, even as my mind wanted it. I wanted a cause I could fix with a phone call and a technician who smelled like ladders. I deleted my building post before anyone could pin me as a crank. Deleting felt like erasing tracks after the thing had already learned the route. I lost a way to get help. The neighbor's watch clicked in reverse, then stalled. The sprinklers hiccuped and hushed. The window turned deep enough that a coin tossed in the soul might never hit bottom. Moths sculpted a human outline at my shoulder, wings whispering like pinned notes. I felt steadier and more alone in the same breath. He said, "Use the mirror if you love your face." I raised a hand mirror higher, aiming for Ben, and the glass flexed. You have to understand how hunger can look like glass when it wants what glass sees. The bend rippled like heat. The mirror showed a corridor 1 door longer than ours, as if the building kept going in reflection. And in that extra space, something turned its attention toward the mirror, not toward me. It felt like a small mercy offered if I kept my eyes open. I told myself if I wanted proof, I would have to give a little. I took a step backward, imitating the neighbor. My heel found the rug fringe and held. I asked the viewer inside the mirror how close it could come before it learned skin, because I think like a mixer and measure thresholds. The door camera whined as if it belonged to a different time. The neighbor flinched for first time and said, "Do not let it learn you in any clean surface. It wants the map, not the story." The hand mirror showed my throat pulsing against glass that had no temperature. Behind the bend, something leaned forward like a question. I tried the red herring once more by force of habit. I cracked the window to balance air. The street and stairwell glass reflected a taillight smear. I filmed the lot for proof in clean air. The backward man kept walking on the same line, unhooked from oxygen or nerves. My little meter refused to help me believe. It was not the air. It was the angle at which seeing occurred. I felt the foolishness flush my face and wondered if foolishness is what the thing uses as a door, because nothing wants to shut on a fool. Then the watch stopped, and the sprinklers stuttered and failed. Silence has a weight when a hiss goes away. That dead air made the whole hallway feel hollow, and now the safe window ended. The neighbor breathed like he had been holding something for years, and finally dropped it. He said, "That was your best time." The entity comes quick when nothing runs. I lifted the mirror to frame the bend, and made the mistake that cannot be undone. I wanted to know. I wanted an answer I could keep. The glass gave me more than I asked. The door camera confirmed that wrong image. It showed me standing where I stood. But from another time, the future left a fingerprint on the present, and it was sticky. My mind tried to organize like audio, aligning waveforms, but the peaks refused to cooperate. I felt the pull of a rule I had already broken. The neighbor said, "You see what it trades? It trades direction. Keep your body backward until it leaves. If you lead with your face, it leads with yours." He turned then, but not to me. He turned toward the dark window and raised his chin like a man meeting weather. The hallway extended by degrees. Lines on the carpet unspooled like tape. The red exit glow smeared and then reassembled farther away. The moth outline warmed my cheek like a soft hand, 100 tiny taps shaping a mask. If you have ever felt breath move against you when no one is there, you know how the body wants to make sense of it by assigning a memory. I stepped backward again to anchor my eyes. The mirror showed my shoulders rising, and the window showed my mouth, and somewhere in those two displays a choice sharpened. I spoke to you in my head, listener, because fear always makes an audience. I said, if you are hearing this, understand that darkness hates witnesses, which is why it turns glass into meals. I told myself a small rule: people, not mirrors. Watch reflections through people, not yourself. The neighbor's choice clicked in my chest like a latch catching. He had kept his back to it for years. It seemed that mercy was exhausting. Time thinned. I asked him how long his backward walk had been. He said, long enough to forget what my front looks like. It reached then, and the reaching looked like water choosing a shape. Not a hand exactly, more like the space where a hand expected to be present. My mind filled it in because minds are eager helpers. The sprinklers failed to offer even a bead. I felt the edges of my face turn aware, as if cheekbones could learn. The moths pressed a little, testing the limit, and I understood that the glass could enroll me if I let my face lead. So I chose not to. Choice is cheap until it narrows options. I bent my head and walked backward with stubborn grace. The first consequence was simple. The neighbor recoiled from the mirror like a man burned and whispered thanks without moving his lips. The second consequence took longer. My phone on the console by the door opened the front camera at 12:07 by itself and stared at my face. Every night after that, the way a scanner opens for a ticket. Time, once it learns you, tries again on a schedule. I tell you that because you deserve the least ugly truth. It is not a curse in any folklore way. It is an appointment and you do not set it. I needed to finish the documentary mix on time because money is a net and I had torn enough of mine. I worked through the day, sleeping in fragments. The older tenant left a plastic pitcher at my door with a note about filling it for the hallway floor at midnight. Running water slows it, she wrote. Give yourself a river to walk in. I did. The hallway smelled like damp pennies. But the hiss returned and bought me minutes. Every minute counts when you're being lured by something that prefers reflections to names. Nights slid by like pianos pushed down long halls. The neighbor never once turned to check on me. At last he faced a dark window instead, offering himself to glass like a ledger balancing a debt. In the hand mirrored the corridor beyond the bend pulse and shrank as if tasting the offer. I glanced at my phone screen to keep my eyes forward. The numbers on the doors read correctly, but the logo on my shirt read backward. That was a hinge. It was not about gas or sleep. It was about direction. The reflection had traded my image for its corridor already, which meant I could never let my face lead again without payment. The watch on his wrist restarted. Tick by tick, the hand went the right way, and relief tasted sour in my mouth. It meant time now belonged to something that had chosen a direction and no longer needed ours. He moved out a week later with no forwarding address. His door stayed open one day too long, then shut forever. I began sleeping in daylight because noon is a gentler night. I avoid mirrors that show me forward. I speak softly near the stairwell, so the moths do not rise like a mask. My phone learned the schedule. At 12:07 every night, the front camera opens like a mouth. I keep my face pointed toward my palms until the hiss of sprinklers returns. Some threads do not cut easily, even with the right scissors. Each time the phone opens, it shows me already outside my door, moving backward past my own mat toward the bend that looks like a throat. The clip saves by itself into a folder I did not create. I delete it and it returns empty and named with tomorrow's date. I work. I keep deadlines. I gnaw at the neighbors with my shoulders. And when the glass wants to lure me again, I give it my back. One night, it will try a new trick. I know that. I hope by then I will be more practiced. If you have theories about who taught him first and where their face went when they failed, tell me. Maybe the telling keeps the mirror busy. Maybe it does not. Either way, the hallway waits. Either way, 12:07 arrives, and something checks if I am really ready. Story 2. A package on my doormat that repeats my name. It said my name in my grandmother's voice, the one I have not heard since I was 12, soft as sugar melting in tea. The sound came from a plain cardboard box on my doormat. It was not a recording I owned. It was not a memory playing tricks. It was a whisper that knew the exact dip of her syllables and the little smile she put on the last letter, and it carried through the peephole like a private joke, as if the box had been waiting for me to press my eye to the door. The hall smelled like burnt paper, a scent we get whenever the building's old heater stutters on. The ceiling fixtures buzzed in a pattern that felt like Morse code, short, long, long, short, short. Paint curled away from the baseboards in thin tongues, and the mail slots rattled when no one touched them. If you have ever lived in a building that speaks in drafts, you know how easy it is to blame everything on pipes and old copper. I wanted to blame this voice on copper. I wanted to laugh and keep grading essays until sleep finally climbed my spine like ivy. I teach literature to ninth graders, and I am proud of being rational. Late papers, late nights, large coffee. Insomnia peels the edge off common sense, which is why I keep rules. No screens after 1. No horror, no rabbit holes. Grade 10 essays. Then read 1 chapter of something with a dog in it. I moved here because the rent was cheap and the walk to school was 10 minutes, and because, despite the peeling paint, this building has a quiet that sits in the daytime like a well-mannered guest. Leaving would mean breaking a lease, losing a shot at tenure, and admitting that sleeplessness was winning again. Across the hall, Mr. Alvarez is a retired postal worker who tells stories like recipes. 3 parts patience, 1 part luck, stir with a pen that never runs dry. He smiles with only one side of his mouth, like he is remembering a delivery that went wrong and right at the same time. On my first week, he pointed at my doormat and said, "Never sign for what does not name itself." I told him I only order books and socks. He said, "That is already too much name on paper." He laughed, but his eyes held a rule. The box did not have a return address. The seam was sealed with a dribble of black wax that had cooled into a neat ribbon like a modest bow. When I touched it, it felt faintly warm, the way a church candle feels even after someone has blown it out. The warmth unsettled me more than the whisper. Wax cools, wax hardens. That is what wax does. This felt like it had been holding a word that still lived inside it. And maybe that word did not want to be cold yet. I told myself the wax had been near a heater. I told myself the lid was glued under it. I recorded a video on my phone to make evidence for a future me who laughs at present me. The audio turned to static when the lens settled on the box, not crackle and hiss, which would be in character for this building. It became a thick, velvety silence, like a blanket had been draped over the mic. When I tilted the camera away, the hall sounds came back. Buzzing lights, a neighbor's soft radio, a cough rising to the staircase. Tilt at the box, silence. Tilt away, noise. It felt like the box was absorbing sound the way certain walls swallow bass. Greedy and soft and intentional. That night, when the whisper came again, it used my grandmother's voice, but not the same sentence. It said the nickname she gave me, the one that no one else pronounces right. I slept with my back against the couch and the peephole glowing on the door like a tiny pale moon. In the morning, the package was gone, as if a neighbor had finally realized a mistake and rescued their lost order. I convinced myself I had dreamed it. I went to school, handed out essays, circled run-on sentences, offered quiet praise where praise is due. Rationality is a raft that floats even when the river argues. Night 2, the package returned a little closer to the threshold, as if it had taken a small breath. Same plain box, same black wax seam. When I nudged it with my shoe, it slid and settled with a weight that surprised me. A slip of cardboard should scoot like a cat across clean wood. This dragged like a sigh. When my phone camera angled toward it, the audio thinned into velvet silence again, and when I pulled away, the hall coughed back. I told myself I would ask Mr. Alvarez about package pranks. I told myself I would use adult words like Bluetooth and speaker and neighbor kids. He answered the door before I knocked, which is either courtesy or superstition about doors. He smelled like orange cleaner and library books, and he held a pen in his hand without remembering that he held it. When I told him what I heard, he did not laugh. He asked me one question. Does it write its name? I told him it had no label. He said, then do not write yours. His face softened when I used the word grandmother. He said, sometimes a carrier loses a route, but the parcel keeps walking. Then he added the kind of line that feels like a proverb but has teeth. The only thing that completes a delivery is a signature. On night 3, the chalk appeared. A rough circle of pale lines drawn around the mailboxes in the lobby, smudged as if someone had stepped through before it dried. lines within lines, a ring inside a ring. The center crossed with a figure that was almost a partial icon and almost a compass. I asked the super if the kids had gotten into the chalk. He shrugged and said teenagers draw things. I am a teacher. I know what teenagers draw. They do not draw words. They draw names and hearts, and sometimes a cat with sunglasses. That night the chalk circle had a fresh gap at the north side, a heel mark biting it open, and the box on my doormat had grown heavier again. I tried the rational path with both hands. I texted the group chat and asked if anyone had left a package by mistake outside 3C. A string of laughing emojis started. Someone wrote, "Is it whispering sweet nothings?" Another said, "Check for a speaker inside." We did that to a roommate once, and he now sleeps with a baseball bat. I wanted it to be that. I want to be the roommate who learns a lesson and buys the pranksters a six-pack for their effort. The box whispered my name twice more at midnight in my grandmother's voice, then switched to my vice principal's, the exact rhythm she uses when she calls me in her office for good news that sound like bad news first. The weight problem began to tap my nerves like a spoon against glass. On night 4, I tried to pick it up and carry it to the trash chute. It felt like a bag of books, not impossibly heavy, but stubborn with gravity. I should not know this, but I do. I weigh a little over 130 pounds. The box felt around 20 that first night, then maybe 40, then 50. On the 4th night, as I cradled it against my hip and Crab walked down the stairs, the sound in the stairwell thinned and the box leaned into my arms like a child pretending to be asleep. When I tipped it into the chute, the whisper rose up the shaft like it hated being vertical. At 7 the next morning, there it was again, sitting on the doormat, a shade closer to the hinge. The wax was darker now, like the black had soaked up light from the hall. A soft stain had bled into the mat underneath, not grease, not water, something dense and matte. My phone recorded nothing but velvet when I filmed it, and when I pulled back, the phone captured my own breath as if sound had been held, and then rewarded back to me. That is when I started to think the seam was not wax. If you have ever rubbed a finger over old candle drips, you know how brittle they are. This gave under my nail like cool taffy and then sprang back, and the pad of my finger tingled as if a hummingbird heart had tapped there. I asked Mr. Alvarez if anyone had filed a prank complaint. He said, "Some rules we do not call in, because calling can move a route that we do not want moved." He showed me a small scar on his wrist, round and pale, and said, "I signed for something that did not name itself 20 years ago, and I have used the cheapest pens ever since, because ink should not remember." He saw the look on my face and tried to smile. He told me to sleep with a heavy book on the doormat, to give the package a different name to carry, to confuse it with weight written as words. I piled a dictionary on top of the box that night, and it whispered my name from underneath in my colleague's voice, and then in the tone of a student who had stopped coming to class in October. Then it used my mother's voice. My mother is alive. She simply lives 400 miles away and says my name like a shelf falling. Hearing that shelf fall through a closed door turned me cold. My rational path shrank to a strip of floor I could barely stand on. I put my ear to the wood and listened. The whisper repeated my name, and then added a phrase my grandmother used to say when I would not go to bed. "Little night moth." It used the exact tilt of her breath on the T, and I sat down hard against the door. A neighbor banged on the elevator door down the hall and cursed, and for a blessed moment I thought, yes, people, machines, regular life. I sent one more message to the group chat. If this is a Bluetooth speaker in a box, please come get your joke. I will clap. The chat filled with typing bubbles that went nowhere and then froze. My phone pinged and then stalled and then spun. The person I wanted most to text was my grandmother, and that hurt in a way that has no category. Insomnia makes old hurts dress up like new threats. The lights flickered once and settled. A teacher has to be good at choices, because there are 50 small ones before lunch. I made mine because I could not sleep, and because I wanted a story with a hinge and a lock. I opened my door at 11:58 and lifted the box again and took it to the chute. On the landing, Mr. Alvarez stood with a mug that smelled like mint and something bitter. He carried a small device in his other hand, a meter no larger than a cassette case, and he waved it near the box. He watched the light and nodded. He said, "Not gas, not air. Do not let hope wear that mask for you." He rested his mug on the rail and put his palm flat on the seam for a moment, like a man blessing a car before a long road. I slid the box into the chute with both arms and let gravity do its work. I listened. No crash echoed back. No slap of cardboard several floors below. Just a second of velvet, and then my name in my grandmother's voice. But now down the length of the hall, not the shaft. The elevator coughed and shook like a smoker finding a laugh. I put my back to the chute and told Mr. Alvarez I was going to file a report with the super. He shook his head once and pointed at the chalk circle downstairs. The gap was wider now, scuffed open by heavy shoes. He said, "You keep breaking that circle when you panic. The line is supposed to remind the building that a delivery belongs to a place, not a person. It only works if no one steps through." At midnight, it used my own voice for the first time. It said my name, then said it again with a rhythm I recognize, like a rehearsal. I hate how vain this is, but we all know how our own name sounds when we say it. There's a little haste, a lift on the second syllable, a small laugh on the exhale. This voice got close but put the laugh in the wrong place, like a friend doing an impression at a party. The effect turned my stomach. If you have ever heard your voice on voicemail for the first time, you know the tiny embarrassment. This felt like that, but hungrier. I pried at the seam with a butter knife. The taffy texture of the black ribbon yielded, and then gripped the knife with a tacky affection that made my skin crawl. It smelled like warm vinyl, and faintly like hot sugar. When I pulled the tip free, a strand of black stretched and thinned, and then snapped, and the snap sounded like a swallowed word being yanked out of the throat. Inside, the walls were lined with something that looked like speaker cones that had refused to grow up. Small, oval, petal-thin, nested in patterns that made a kind of logic if you refused to give a name. The cones did not vibrate when the voices came. They flexed the way a pulse flexes under a wristwatch, soft and living. Not a Bluetooth prank. Then, no battery pack, no hardware, no laser-cut foam hiding wires. Only the soft black seam that felt like a cooled vowel and the skin of sound inside. I returned the butter knife to the kitchen, because fear makes you put things back exactly where they belong, as if neatness could save you. When I closed the lid again and pressed the seam, the black ribbon reformed around the edges like breath fog on cold glass, then congealed and shone. I did not have religion, but I had a moment of wishing for a prayer that does not ask for too much. The box used my voice again at 12:19, and this time it put the laugh in the right place. The first time we get imitated well, we are supposed to smile and be flattered. Hearing my voice whisper my name through a door made me feel like a room had been built inside my chest, and someone else lived there. Mr. Alvarez slid a piece of paper under my door. I felt the rough of it against the rug. The note said, "Chalk in the lobby. Do not break the ring again. Fill it if you can." And underneath he had written the sentence I could not shake. Never sign for what does not name itself. When the fifth night came, the box had grown, not in size, but in presence. The floorboard under the hinge creaked in a new way, a complaint, a tired joint. When I hauled the box off the mat to test it again, it strained my wrist. A number floated through my head, uninvited. This is how heavy my collie Carla is, the one who speaks softly and lifts weights. I slapped myself in the mind for thinking that, but the number stuck to me anyway. The box had matched someone's weight, maybe the last person it recorded. I put it back and sat with my spine to the wood and listened to the scene breathe like a small warm animal. I made the worst choice in service of the best story. I signed my name on the scene with a pen I should have thrown away last semester. The nib caught on the tacky surface, the way it sometimes catches on bad paper, and then the pen ran easier than it had any right to run. It might have been imagination, but it felt like the ink did not lie on top. It felt like the surface drank it. When I finished the last letter, something inside the box exhaled, warm air rising to the lid and washing my face the way heat vents do when winter wants your nose. You can tell yourself stories about consent while holding a pen. The truth is that signatures are rituals that do not need belief. When the air came up and touched my skin, the speakers inside the box flexed like an ear pinch closed by fingers, and then they opened in unison. The hallway deepened. The burnt paper smell went sweet, then sickly, then something like old frosting. The light sat still, and their buzz vanished into velvet. My name came from the box in a dozen voices at once, layered like a chorus that hates harmony. My mother, my vice principal, my first teacher, my grandmother, a student, a stranger, and then me, and all of them held the last syllable like a breath mint. The building did not move, but it felt like it had been readdressed. The air had a label I could not read. Mr. Alvarez opened his door and stepped into the hall with his mug. No surprise on his face, only fatigue, like he had been waiting for the scheduled delivery longer than either of us wanted to admit. He set his mug on my doorknob and knelt, old knees clicking, and he took out his small meter and did not bother to turn it on. He said, "Signing completes a contract, and contracts belong to carriers." He looked at the chalk circle beyond the stairwell glass. It had been neatly filled, each broken line repaired by a steady hand, and then, as if in reply, a fresh gap opened at the north side as we watched, slow and deliberate, like a mouth daring us. It was not delivering to me. It was delivering me. That realization does not come with a neon sign. It arrives like a word you forgot and pretended you never needed. The membranes inside the box arrange themselves without moving, their patterns suddenly obvious in the way a hidden picture appears when you squint. Their gentle oval shapes match the curve of a human chest, the ribs under skin, the little slope between collarbones where a necklace sits. I pressed my palm to my sternum and felt my pulse skip. The box like that. It leaned up through the seam, not visually, but in pressure, as if the weight of the air had been hung on a hook inside me. I tried to step back, and the floor offered no purchase. I am not describing a force that yanked me. It was more like being agreed with too hard. The chalk ring downstairs brightened in my mind, or maybe my mind begged it to. I bolted for the stairwell, because panic always turns into movement. I jumped the last 2 steps and hit the lobby and saw the circle. Fresh white, clean edges, a neat gap. I stepped into the circle with both feet, because I am a teacher who loves rubrics, and I wanted the circle to grade me safe. The second my heel crossed the line, the chalk turned dull and the gap flowed closed. The ward did not protect the panicked person who would not respect it. It sealed me in with the box I had summoned by writing my name. Behind me, upstairs, my door stood open like a lip parting. The box began to speak my name on an inhale instead of an exhale, which is wrong in a way that words cannot carry. Mr. Alvarez came down slowly, his hand on the rail, his breath like paper folding and unfolding. He did not enter the circle. He said, "There is a way to return a parcel that has been wrongly accepted, but it takes more than I have." He touched his wrist where the pale scar shone, and I understood something ugly. He had signed for a delivery that did not name itself and somehow kept walking long enough to grow old, which is a hard kind of luck. The voices grew louder without raising their volume. That is the trick of good sound design. You feel space change and assume loudness. The box said my name like a beginning, not an accusation. It wanted to carry me the way a song carries a chorus into a room. I took the butter knife and drew it across the seam to erase my signature. The knife tip came back black, and the black felt warm like a word again. I wiped it on my jeans and left a smear that smelled faintly of sugar. I pressed the blade to the chalk line, and it squealed like a violin string snapping. The sound went into the box and came out as my grandmother's laugh, which is not fair. I tried the red herring one last time because the mind needs an exit even when the body knows the door is fake. I pried the lid open enough to slide my phone inside to catch the Bluetooth speaker I knew I would not find. The black ribbon flexed friendly around the phone like a sleeve, and for one wicked second, I felt how nice it would be to be held that gently. The membranes inside did not vibrate. They breathed. My screen went dark and my own face reflected in it, not because of the camera, but because the box had decided my face was part of its cargo list. I pulled the phone back, and it stayed dark until I held it flush against my chest. And then it woke as if recognizing home. I stopped and listened to my own name. The first syllable had a thickness I put there when I am tired. The box had learned that since last night, I could wait and lose, or I could choose and pay. I chose the only thing that felt like not surrendering. I took the chalk from the lobby shelf, the little stub the super keeps in the cracked teacup, and I repaired the circle with my left hand while holding the butter knife in my right, as if drawing two lines at once could rewrite a rule. I filled the gap and stepped out and pressed the chalk into the seam on the box, which is not how chalk works. The chalk stung like a cold tooth and then powdered in a soft cloud that the membranes inside inhaled. The voices faltered like a choir losing its place. Mr. Alvarez nodded once and said, "Wait remembers." He moved his foot so I could see the old scale he had dragged into the lobby. He set the box on it carefully, eyes steady, hands gentle. The needle trembled and settled, and the number was my weight, not yesterday, not tomorrow. Today, the way a mirror knows daylight. The box had arrived at the deadline. He said, "It will open whether you open it or not. The difference is whether you go as mail or as sender." I did a ridiculous thing then. I hugged it. I put my arms around plain cardboard and pressed my cheek to the lid and said my name the way my grandmother said it, soft as sugar melting. I said it with the care of someone speaking to an animal that might bite or step closer. The membranes inside slowed their little pulse. The black seam warmed and then cooled, and then warmed again like a person trying not to cry. I told it that I was not a parcel. I told it that I was a person whose voice had weight, and that weight belonged where my ribs kept their quiet. It sounds foolish. It was foolish, but foolishness sometimes draws a new line in chalk when the old one has been erased by better pens. The box split anyway. It split like a yawn, not a cut. The room filled with voices that did not get louder but got closer, and closeness is worse. They layered until I could not find a thread of me. I felt the membranes line up with my sternum and pressed lightly, a pulse counting, the way you count a child's fever if you have no thermometer. Mr. Alvarez whispered my name like a man trying to steady a stack of dishes. He said, "Step back out of its path, not out of the circle, out of its path. The difference matters." I shuffled sideways, one foot on chalk, one foot on tile. The membrane slid off center, lost the perfect map. And for a second, the chorus breathed my name with a question mark instead of period. That was enough. The seam cooled like a used match. The chalk line held. The voices retreated into the lid, like mice that have been chased back under a stove. The box settled on the scale, and the needle drifted down a few pounds, then stalled. Mr. Alvarez picked it up with a grunt that turned into a laugh halfway through. He tucked it under his arm like a misbehaving football and limped toward the stairs. He did not look back. He did not say where he would take it. He did not need to. Some people are routes, not destinations. I stood in the lobby with chalk dust on my fingers and the taste of old sugar in my mouth. When I went upstairs, my doormat was clean. My door was closed. On the mat lay a small slip of paper stamped in red with one word, delivered. Underneath was a signature. It was mine, written in the hand I use when I am sprinting toward the bell. The ink was still faintly wet, but my pen lay on the kitchen counter. The slip did not name the sender or the receiver. It did not name the contents. It did not need to. That night, my phone turned its microphone on by itself at 12:03 and recorded 30 seconds of Velvet. At 12:07, it recorded my name in my voice, clear as a bell. It saved the file to a folder I did not create with the title outbound. When I pressed play, I could hear a faint scratch in the background, the sound a pen makes when signing through a layer of carbon paper. If you have ever signed a receipt and felt the bump of the layers underneath, you know that texture. I deleted the file and it returned under a slightly different name, as if trying a new address format for the same location. Mr. Alvarez is quieter now. He waters a geranium on his windowsill with the care of a man pouring tea for a guest who forgives him. The chalk circle in the lobby looks new every morning and smudged by evening, and no one admits to fixing it. The black wax seam on my memory is cooled, but sometimes the air near the door smells like hot sugar and warm vinyl. When I press a finger to the wood, it feels as if someone on the other side has just lifted their finger. The floorboard near the hinge no longer complains, but the quiet has a shape I can feel even with my eyes closed. I am grading essays again. The kids still argue about metaphors. My vice principal still uses my name like good news that sounds bad first. I sleep between 1 and 4, then again after dawn. At noon I sometimes hear a knock that is not a knock, more like a pen tapping a desk. I ignore it because I learned something that week that is worth more than tenure. You do not sign for what does not name itself. You do not give ink to a mouth that does not say what it wants before you open the door. And if a box repeats your name in voices you miss and voices you dread, you stand still and let your ribs keep their quiet. One thing I cannot decide. The slip that said delivered had my signature in the hand I use when I am hurried, but there was a tiny extra curl on the final letter, a kind as my grandmother used to add when she signed birthday cards. She would tuck a small loop under the line, like a secret. It is on the slip by my lamp right now. Faint as a sigh, and I have not shown it to anyone. If you think you know who signed it for me the first time, or if you think you know where Mr. Alvarez took the box, tell me. Maybe the telling is a kind of chalk we can draw together. Maybe stories are how we keep our names from becoming cargo, when the hall smells like burnt paper and the lights buzz like code. Story 3. Thin walls teach my neighbor how I breathe. I heard myself breathing from the other side of the wall, half a second late, like the room had learned my lungs and was practicing them back at me to see if I noticed. The apartment smells like damp plaster and boiled dust. Radiator ticks climb the scale like a child testing stairs. A cold line of air seeps beneath the baseboard, salted with metal. The vent over my desk rattles whenever I sigh too sharply, as if scolding me for wasting air. When the building settles, you can hear a low hum that is not the heating and not the street, a patient inhale that waits for you to exhale, and answers with patience that feels personal, which is worse than loud. I am a linguistics grad student, and I am almost out of time. My thesis is on rhythm and spontaneous speech. I count the length of pauses and the size of breaths. I know the patterns people do not know they make. I pay my rent by tutoring and stacking campus library shifts. Quiet nights are my oxygen. If I lose them, I lose the thread of sentences, and grades follow that thread all the way down, which is how you lose funding without anyone saying a word. I stay because the rent is near campus, because the least penalty would pulverize me, because I am stubborn enough to think I can outlast a building. I drink tea at midnight and type gentle notes into messy transcripts. When the radiator gurgles, I tap the pipe with a pencil to shift the bubbles. The neighbor in the next unit never appears in daylight. I hear drawers open and close and the soft drag of slippers. Once at 2 a.m., there was a knock for light taps that matched my heartbeat perfectly, and then nothing else for 5 long minutes that ended with my hand still hovering above the knob, waiting for a second signal that did not come. The first night the echo matched my cough exactly. I coughed because tea went down at the wrong angle. The wall coughed back through the vent, half a second too late, with a little wet tail that was mine. I froze so hard my chair squealed. Then the scratching began, a faint pencil sound, like someone tracing curves on paper, slow and careful. I put my ear to the vent and heard the whisper shaped by metal. Do not stop halfway. It hurts when you stop. Breath ran a little cooler over my ear, as if the vent itself had leaned close to say it. Foreshadowing gathered fast and small. The vent cover rattled when I breathed out too hard, as if my breath had weighed on both sides. The light over the sink flickered whenever I yawned, stuttering twice when I tried to fake a yawn, and not stuttering at all when I failed to fool it. By the radiator, I found a tape recorder like the kind my advisor keeps for interviews, a cheap plastic brick someone had left behind. When I pressed play, it did not play words. It played breath counting my rhythm, with the exhale first, then the inhale, all of it just ahead of what my own chest wanted to do next. And I almost followed it without meaning to, which scared me enough to punch stop with my thumbnail. I tried to be reasonable. Maybe the neighbor listens to sleep-study podcasts. People breathe along to those. Maybe they have a humidifier that wheezes in a way that tricks the ear. I searched my own history and found an app one had installed last winter, when my lungs felt tight after flu. The app had been deleted months ago. The icon was a grave marker in my phone's memory. My neighbor exhaled when I did, then inhaled a hair sooner than I wanted, like someone stepping into your lane and offering a hand, which is awful if what you need is a lane. I knocked on the wall at noon. Noon is neutral. The knock came back gently, like I had tapped a drum with my finger, and the drum had remembered a better technique. No voices followed. Only the pad of that pencil scratch resumed, filling in the curves of sound I had not made yet. I set my phone to record. The file came back empty of anything but room tone. When I moved the phone closer to the vent, my battery dived, and the screen went briefly gray, and then returned with the timestamp wrong by 3 seconds, which is a measurement I know in my bones. On night 2, the lag closed a little. You learn to count delay the way musicians learn to count rests. Inhale, and then the wall inhales, but closer now, not behind you, but almost beside you, like a person sharing a blanket, which can be kind until it is not. I woke to my own name drawn in fog on the window. Inside the glass, a single breath's worth of letters that blurred into nothing. I do not talk in my sleep. I checked the lock twice and the chain once. I listened to the vent and heard, under the hum, the faintest hint of words that had been unsaid and now wanted a place to land. Beat 1 came when a voice spoke in sync with my breathing. Do you know how wide your lungs are? It said on my exhale, as if lungs were a room you could tour. And I said no under my breath, and the voice said, let me finish them for you. And I stopped breathing because that was the only idea available in the second. The vent shivered and the cover rattled, and a sharp whine climbed out of the duct, a metal note like a train brakeman making sparks. The lights browned out and recovered, and my ribs pushed a little involuntary inhale that tasted warm and dusty, like bed stored in a closet, on the floor by the radiator. The tape recorder had moved 4 inches, square against the boards, like a chess piece that had been gently planned. I found my name scratched in the dust next to it. Not letters, a waveform shape. If you have ever looked at your own breath in the spectrogram, you know the wide dark swells and the sharp paler edges. The pencil sketch hugged those curves. I erased it with my sleeve, and the pencil scraped the same line back in, not angry, careful. I whispered, "Who are you?" And the vent answered by rattling tiny little yes, sound that might have been the screws vibrating, or might have been a throat learning consonants through metal, which is how nightmares begin when you study phonetics. The red herring marching on schedule. After office hours, I sat outside with my laptop and searched the forum for the sleep therapy podcast that does paced breathing. A thread from last year listed several episodes that matched what I had heard. I wanted that matched the way thirsty people want soda, even if water would be better. I stood in the hall by the neighbor's door and listened. Through the wood came a murmur that could be audio. Through the vent came a breath that matched the hitch in my chest from climbing stairs. The app theory held for exactly the length of time it took me to hiccup. The wall hiccuped back half a second later and laughed, soft as paper tearing, and the podcast theory died without ceremony. Beat 2 arrived with the lights. When I yawned from exhaustion, the bulb of the stove flickered and stayed dim as long as my mouth was open, then brightened when I finished, as if the circuit had borrowed my rhythm and returned it. I yawned again on purpose, and the bulb dimmed obligingly, then gave an extra little pulse that did not belong to me, and my stomach tilted. The tape recorder clicked on by itself, and a breath played that was mine, but earlier, 1 beat ahead. Invited my lungs to fall into step the way you fall into line when metronome is loud and insistent and you are tired, which is true of me more often than I admit. I tried to fight the rhythm. I will spare you the ugly details. Bodies are cooperative and stupid sometimes. Give them a pattern, and they will follow it while your mind writes a manifesto about why they should not. The lag narrowed until I felt a tug forward when I wanted to rest. It was not a hand. It was the expectation of a hand, and that could be stronger in the dark. I turned every light on and opened the window to the cold, and counted 6 in and 6 out like a child doing laps without water. The wall answered on 5 in and 5 out like an impatient coach. Beat 3 was a knock. For soft taps at the exact tempo of my heartbeat, not loud, never loud. "Let me finish your lungs," the voice said, and the words fit into my inhale as if my chest had been made to make that sentence. The vent cover rattled in a new way, loose at the top screw like a mouth smiling too wide. I put my hand on it and felt air slick against my palm like breath on skin. Not hot, not cold, a temperature that lives at the back of the throat, where words begin. The lights flickered once. My phone died on 63%. I asked friends to come over and listen. This is a part in stories when friends tell you to sleep and drink water. They did that. One said, "Thin walls, white noise machine. You are primed for patterns because of your work." Another said, "I hear my neighbors cough through 3 layers of brick." You are not haunted. You are grad school. They left me a small fan that made a friendly hiss, and the vent used that hiss as a metronome, and the knock came on my heartbeat anyway, which is a kind of proof no friend can sit through if they want to get up for work in the morning. The building turned mean about it. Heat failed for 2 nights. My space heater tripped a breaker every time I placed it under the vent. The landlord texted a shrug. The hum, that is not the street, grew a soft undertow. When I tried to record, the files corrupted with a smear that looked exactly like my breath pattern on a spectrogram, and nothing at all like the breath of a stranger. In the dark hour, the voice through the vent returned. You breathe for both of us now, it said, and the pencil scratching kept time. I asked who was us. The answer was the noise a mouth makes when it only has breath to spend. Revelation arrived with a poor apology. I pressed my ear to the vent and spoke low. Are you a person? I asked, and the light at the sink dimmed. Are you in that room? I asked, and the light brightened as if pleased with a better question. The recorder clicked, and a new tape spun itself to life without hands. My exhale came out of it, just ahead of my chest. Do not stop halfway, it said in my voice this time, and the vent, pleased with a lesson, purred. It felt like a classroom gone wrong, a lesson planning me. The choice cornered me. Either I kept following and lost track of whose lungs did what, or I held my breath to break the cycle and paid whatever cost was attached. I held my breath because fear makes stubborn people brave in small, stupid ways. I closed my mouth and counted 8 and then 10, and then 12, and every light in the apartment popped in a soft plosive, not shatter, a fast kiss goodbye. And the vent screamed a metal scream that climbed my spine and made my teeth ring like spoons. The walls wavered as if my eyes had become a cheap lens. This is the part where I should have called someone. I did not. I opened the vent instead. 2 screws, then 2 more, the cover coming away in my hands like a mask that had decided to be honest. A wind came up in the duct, not from the building, from the timing. A draft that matched my heart, and then learned it, which is intimacy you do not want from pipes. Plaster crumbled off the corner seam. I pressed, and a piece of wall gave like stale bread, and then I was looking into a cavity the size of a coffin long ways, lined with black mold and the soft cardboard of old tapes. Cassette shells lay in neat stacks, unlabeled, but each wrapped in a rubber band gone amber with age. Some had melted a little into the plaster. Some had threads of hair stuck to them in a way that made me breathe through my teeth. In the back of the cavity, a small fan pulsed. Not an HVAC fan, a desk fan. The cheap kind that sits on a file cabinet, wired into the vent so that air would move in a gentle loop. When the fan pushed, the tapes clicked in their cases like patient tongues. The recorder on my floor clicked as if answering its family. I took one tape at random and snapped the brittle band and fed the ribbon into the old recorder, because of course I did. Breath filled the room. Not words, never words. Just the way air leaves and returns when a person gets to the end of the thought. The rhythm was mine before last winter, when coffee made me jitter faster. The next tape was my rhythm from last month. The next, my rhythm from Tuesday when I ran for the bus and pretended I was not winded. Each tape played a little ahead of comfort. Each tape offered a lesson before I knew I needed it. A training wheel on the side of breath I did not consent to learn, and my lungs followed because bodies are helpful even when help hurts. The neighbor was not there, or the neighbor did not exist as a person standing in a room. The pencil scratching had mapped my breath and fed it back to me until I ran along the groove. The tapes had learned my increments. The vent carried my rehearsal into itself and gave it back polished. The mold smelled sweet, like old oranges pressed into books. The fan clicked and clicked as if asking please. I reached into the cavity, and the air around the tapes moved with interest the way a crowd leans when a singer takes the stage. The twist clicked down like a latch. I had not been echoing a neighbor learning me. I had been trained by the wall to breathe on its time. The lag had not closed because I was winning. It had closed because the system had fitted me to it. A teacher making a student match the metronome until the metronome moves and the student calls it instinct. I know rhythm. I know when rhythm is mine and when it has been coerced. I felt the difference rise inside my ribs like cold shame, and I hated it, and my lungs inhaled on the wall's count anyway, already obedient, which left me with one last small thing I could still do. I leaned closer and spoke into the cavity like a microphone. Take it back, I said. If you want to finish lungs, finish the empty ones behind this wall. I will not give you mine. I am not a generous person, but I offered something I am not sure I had the right to offer. The dead space in the building, the air that had been misfiled. The recorder hiccuped. The fan clicked and stopped. Silence fell in the room, and it was not velvet and it was not heavy. It was the kind of silence that rooms make when they're listening for a better song and not finding one, which is a mercy if you believe in small mercies. The cavity sighed, a long room tone exhale that lifted dust and peppered my face. I scooped tapes and dropped them into a grocery bag because panic wanted trophies, and the bag grew heavy with lessons that were not mine to keep. The vent breathed once, on its own timing, and then reluctantly fell to the building's real schedule, which is ordinary and noisy and full of strange kindness. I replaced the cover and tightened only the top screws. I told the wall, "You can rattle when you want, but not for me," and the wall did not answer, which is a kind of answer you hope for. Fallout has edges you catch later. I turned in a thesis draft, and my advisor said the analysis lunged at conclusions. My pauses did not behave. My sentences leaned forward at the wrong moments, as if trying to arrive before they were spoken. In conversation, I gasped slightly too early and watched people tilt their heads and forgive me without knowing why they are forgiving. Nights are quieter, but the hush carries a ghost of my own inhale, a memory of having followed orders I do not remember giving, and I dislike how much that memory fits. Sometimes at 3 a.m. the vent cover rattles when I breathe out too hard, not from tutor on the other side, but from the fact of air deciding where it wants to go. The light over the sink flickers when I yawn if I am tired enough to forget who learned whom. The pencil sound returns in the smallest hours, not tracing my wave, but sketching lines that do not match, as if someone is practicing a different lung in the dark. I leave a tape by the radiator sometimes. It clicks on by itself and records room tone and dies politely, which feels like grace, if you like small, complicated graces. The last time I pressed my ear to vent, a draft moved across it like the first page of a book being turned. A voice that was not mine and not the one that borrowed me said one narrow sentence. "Thank you for finishing halfway," it said, and the radiator ticked 3 notes that were almost laughter, and then the building settled into a sound I had come to trust again, the honest wet thrum of pipes doing work, which is the only choir I want at night. If you have felt your breath follow someone else's timing, tell me. If you think you know who is supposed to live in the thin cavity, tell me that too. Someone's lungs might have been taught to keep going, and I hope that is what I felt. But hope is a rhythm. I do not let the walls set anymore. I count my own rests. I yawn with the lights on. I listen, then I decide. Story 4. The HOA president who never blinks at my first HOA meeting, she looked straight at me across the folding tables and did not blink for 3 hours. Not once. Not even when dust floated into the fluorescent glare and a gnat flirted with the corner of her eye. As if the lids had learned a rule my body does not know. The room was too bright and smelled like bleach and winter coats. A plastic clock ticked loud enough to feel, not here. People shuffled papers as if their hands had been trained to make that sound. Mrs. Calhoun sat at the head of the U, a glass of water by her right hand, perfectly clear and perfectly still. I told myself some people stare. I told myself some people train. Then the second hand stepped towards 7, and she did not look away, and my breath stalled for no good reason. I bought the little blue house on Maple Court for quiet after years of city sirens and apartment arguments. I wanted lawns mowed low, kids on scooters, rules that kept the night still. An HOA felt like a promise. Fines are cheaper than fear. Everybody smiles at the mailbox. I am not naive. I know committees can be petty. I figured I could be polite and forget the rest. The welcome packet thick, as a phone book suggested. I keep my hedges to 12 inches. Paint my door pre-approved green and respect meeting hours. That last phrase should have been nothing. It felt like a line drawn with a knife. She greeted me that afternoon with a handshake colder than the weather. She wore a blouse with tiny anchors and a pin shaped like a key. Her pupils did not twitch when sunlight shifted. No blink. Up close it read as composure, the way a surgeon might hold still. Her smile never reached the skin under her eyes, so there were no crinkles to forgive a stare. "Welcome to our eyes on Maple Court," she said, and for a second I heard it as our eyes of Maple Court, like the street ahead, and we were perched in it, watching ourselves from inside its skull. The first disturbance came folded in printer paper. A day after the meeting, a neighbor slid minutes under my door. They were tidy and bland. Lawn care, do us, a reminder about hedges. At the bottom, the timestamp read 3:33 a.m., typed in that little font that pretends it is neutral. The meeting had adjourned at 9. I texted the group thread. Typos happen. Someone replied with a thumbs up sticker, and then a cat. That night my door camera glitched at exactly 3:33. The screen going white, not black, as if it had seen more light than it could carry. At the next meeting, the cameras in the room cut to snow when she walked in, like a ship stealing radio. The treasurer cursed softly and then apologized to the room, glancing at Mrs. Calhoun for permission she did not receive. Later, at the food truck social, I asked a woman in a red scarf whether the president had a condition. Dry eyes, maybe. The scarf woman's smile collapsed and rebuilt itself. "Do not make her close them," she said, passing me a paper plate. She said like the rule that matters most is the one nobody writes. Behind us, Mrs. Calhoun's glass of water reflected string lights, untouched, condensation ring unbroken, as if blinking would spill the street. Someone posted photos from the barbecue. In the album, faces blurred when people moved under the lights. Hair turned to streaks. Only Mrs. Calhoun's eyes were crisp in every frame, like two pins tacking the pictures to a surface I could not see. She stood in 6 of the photos, and in each one her lids looked too thin to be trusted, as if something had worn them down from the inside. I clicked faster than felt polite. In one shot, a child ran through a sprinkler, and the water looked like glass mid-fall. Her eyes in that image were sharp enough to cut a finger if you tried to touch the screen. I began watching my own house at night in the lazy way that feels like self-care and becomes something else. At 1 a.m., 3 times in a week, I saw a white shape on the sidewalk that resolved into Mrs. Calhoun's cardigan and neat skirt. She stood still with her hands folded and simply looked at my windows. The streetlights did not love her. They flickered when I blinked, steady when I held my eyes open. You will say coincidence, and I wanted that. But after minutes of testing, the lights began to answer my lids like a nervous dog barking back, and silence rolled over the block when I forced a yawn and failed to cry. In the mailroom, I found a binder of old minutes. Pages smudged with fingerprints and coffee halos. Her name was perfect on every page, clean ink, no drag marks, written with a pen that never knows tremor. In the margins, faint pencil eyes looked out, dozens of them quickly sketched, all irises darkened, all lids thin like skin stretched over almonds. The pupils had a ring around them like the kind you see in photos when flash finds a reflection. I touched one and graphite came away on my thumb, soft as dust from under a bed you have not looked under. My doorbell camera hated her. Every time she crossed the lens, the image blew out into a smear of bright, like staring straight at noon. When she passed, the camera behaved again. My phone, when I tried to film from the window, showed her on the sidewalk as a pale figure without face detail. When she turned toward my lens, the footage did not go black. It showed my own reflection in the glass blinking out of sync with my body. Ask anyone. Your mirror does not blink before you. Mine did. And then it held its eyes open while I tested my lids, and that tiny mismatch laid a cold coin on my tongue. Neighbors began turning away in small ways. The man who borrowed my ladder left it by the fence without knocking. Two women who had hugged me at the food truck now waved from far away, hands low and quick. A letter appeared, polite as a teacher grading in green ink. Please refrain from disruptive recording and aggressive lights after dusk. We value tranquility. It used my name. It never used blinking. My internet cut out at exactly 3:33 2 nights running, then returned at 3:34 with a ping that made the hair on my arms rise. My bedroom window learned a new habit. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks at the minute, like the clock itself wanted to be recognized as a person knocking to be let in. I decided on mercy. I told myself a medical reason would fix it. I brought eye drops to the next meeting and placed them near her water. She smiled at the gift with the mouth only. Her eyes watered, small bright pools that never spilled, never tracked down. When she reached for the drops, her gaze did not change. She lifted the little bottle, tilted above her right eye, and squeezed until a glassy tear rose and then vanished not on the eye, not into the corner, but into the skin around, absorbed as if the lid had drank. The room went quiet for one collective breath. Then the treasurer cleared his throat to read the lawn section, voice an octave too high, as if he looked into a mirror and the mirror had chosen not to show him. After that, a neighbor with a lawn that looks like velvet pulled me aside by the bulletin board. His hand shook like a leaf the size of a plate. He said, "She is not protecting herself." He looked at the water, untouched. He stared at the clock on the wall and winced as if the second hand hurt him. He said, "She is keeping something from seeing through us. Do not make her close them. We pay our dues. This is what we are paying for." He laughed once without humor and patted my shoulder like my skin might fly away. Then he handed me the binder of minutes and told me to read the times like a map. The ticking element announced itself blunt as gravel. Meetings started at 7. They always took forever. No one left. People stood to stretch. We talked about mailbox colors as if we were saving a town that had nothing else left to save. Every time I looked at a clock in that room, the hands moved wrong in tiny ways. When I glanced back, they had repaired themselves. When adjournment came, always after 9, we would wander into the night pretending the air was ordinary. The official minutes, delivered the next day, stamped each conclusion at 3:33 a.m., as if what we had actually decided had been decided after our bodies had gone to bed. My choice came from fatigue and pride. I brought a small flashlight to the next meeting. It fit into my palm the way decisions fit into mouths when nobody is ready to say them. The room was too bright for a flashlight to matter, which made it feel safe. Halfway through the argument about permissible holiday lights, I flicked the beam across her face, careless as a moth. The effect was small. Her lids dropped like a curtain remembering its job. One blink, one long, smooth blink, not flinch, not startle. Every person in the room exhaled in a single sound and then went very still, like breath had been organized and then canceled. The overhead lights cut to a softer hum, not off but wrong. The air shifted temperature the way rooms do when a door opens somewhere you cannot see. The windows and their metal frames turned dark as if the night outside had stepped closer to here. Mrs. Calhoun kept her lids lowered. It was not sleep, and it was not rest. It felt like the absence of a hand that had been holding a door shut. Someone's pen fell and hit linoleum like a dropped fork. Nobody moved to pick it up. I could hear my blood in my ears. It sounded like feet on shallow stairs, running, stopping, listening. Motion began in the reflections first. The glass of the trophy case across the room showed a smear that was not ours, a tall shape moving behind the glass. Not in the room, not in the hall, behind the mirror layer itself, which is a kind of corridor if you think about it. The windows showed the community room from a different angle. Our backs, our shoulders, our heads tilted toward the table like children learning to pray. In the reflected room, someone stood where no one stood in ours, a figure too straight, too smooth, like a suit on a hanger that had been taught how to walk. My phone screen woke in my pocket and showed my camera facing forward, open without my thumb. In the black of the phone, I saw my own eyes wider than they had any right to be. A pressure arrived at my lids. Not touch, expectation. A polite test that asked whether my eyes were available. If you have ever felt a sneeze try to choose your face, you know the panic of a choice you cannot negotiate. I pressed my nails into my palms and stared at the water glass by Mrs. Calhoun's hand. A bead of condensation had formed and was about to run. If she had blinked a drink, the bead would fall and the water would acknowledge the world. It did not fall. Her hand did not move. She kept the door shut with skin alone. The thing in the reflection leaned closer to the glass. It did not have a face. It had the suggestion of eyes the way fog has the suggestion of shape when it wants to be a person for a second as you pass. It felt interested, not hungry, which in some ways is worse. Interested means it will keep trying. A man near the window began to cry the quiet cry grown men do when a rule breaks in front of them. The treasurer whispered a prayer he probably had not said since childhood. I wanted to apologize to Mrs. Calhoun with my whole throat. I wanted to say sorry for making you close them. I wanted to ask what she has looked at all these years. So we did not have to. She opened them. The room shifted back one notch. The reflections dragged like heavy cloth and then settled. The lights were ordinary lights again. The water bead slid halfway down the glass and then stopped, held by surface tension, as if a finger pressed from the other side. Mrs. Calhoun looked at me with a plain human grief that made me wish for petty instead. She said, "Please do not test me again." And for a moment I saw her as a neighbor who likes keys and pins and binders and needs nights to be fences she can stand in for 8 hours at a time. The meeting continued. It had to. The clock ticked. People reclaimed their voices as if their throats were lost property. I went home and pretended to sleep. At 3:33, the internet cut, a neat little click in the router light. 3 knocks came on the bedroom window. Pause. 3 knocks. The sound of knuckles against glass, or something that has learned knuckles from listening. I did not look. Curiosity is not a virtue here. I lay very still and counted to 100 and lost track at 47 because my eyes had watered and I did not want to wipe them for fear of teaching something about closing. When the knocking stopped, my phone lit up a notification that the HOA had posted revised minutes. I did not open them. I already knew the timestamp. The delayed echo settled into my days. People waved again but watched my eyes as if checking for a defect. My camera misbehaved around mirrors. It recorded me sleeping with my eyes slightly open in a way that looked more medical than demonic, which is a mercy I will take. The neighbor with the velvet lawn left a basket with muffins and no note. Across the street, Christmas lights blinked in sequences I had not seen before, beautiful and nervous. I went to the next meeting with empty hands. The water by Mrs. Calhoun still sat unbroken, a lake inside a glass too calm for human life. There was a final blink in her future. You could feel it in the way people sat closer to the door. She held for another month. She held through a vote on mailbox trim. She held through 3 letters to me about hedges. Then January brought a storm that ate the sound from the world. We met anyway because rules are sturdy when we have nothing else. Halfway through talk of ice melt, her pupils jumped like fish. Some current caught them. She blinked without help and the lights in the room fell to that wrong hum, and every reflection filled again. Quick this time, not exploring, arriving. I felt the presence at my eyelids before my name left anyone's mouth. It knew the path now. It applied a gentle pressure, like a teacher pushing her shoulder blades into better posture. I thought of the neighbor at the bulletin board, saying we pay our dues. I thought of Mrs. Calhoun's hand near the glass and how tired she must carry in the bones around her eyes. I thought of the knock on my window, 3 and 3, and realized it had been tapping a tiny metronome on my life. So I would open on count. I squeezed my eyes shut, and the pressure slid across the lids like a moth's wing, weightless and certain. It found the corner. It found the part of the eye that names light. I said no, not with my mouth, with my face. The way you say no when a sneeze comes at the wrong moment in a silence. It hesitated, which is a gift, in that breath. Mrs. Calhoun opened her eyes again, and the room wobbled back into place. She stood, slow as a tree taught to walk. She said, meeting adjourned, voice normal, and people scattered with the politeness of animals, leaving a field that has just been struck by lightning. 5 days later, a postcard arrived in every mailbox. It said Mrs. Calhoun has stepped down due to personal reasons. The new president, a man with a very average blink, smiled from the porch and promised transparency. His eyes watered when the wind cut, and he wiped them with a handkerchief, and the street seemed to breathe. Mrs. Calhoun is gone. Nobody says where. The binder of minutes in the mailroom has a gap where her name would land. The new minutes end their sentences with tidy 9 o'clocks. The cameras behave. The string lights look like small fireflies learning to hold still. At 3:33, my internet still clicks out, then resets, old habits practicing themselves. The knocking on the window has not stopped. Some nights it is 3 and 3 like a courtesy. Some nights it is a long, patient tap that waits for my lungs to make a mistake and match the rhythm. Last week, I woke to my bathroom mirror showing my eyes open while I slept. My lids were parted a sliver, lashes still, whites showing a thin crescent that should not be visible in rest. The glass fogged with my breath and cleared and fogged again while my mirror self watched me without blinking. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, and my reflection did not move because it was not mine. It was a record. It was a map. When I raised my hand, the mirror raised its own on time. I turn away first because there is power in refusing to see. If you think you know where she went and whether she can drink water now, tell me. If you think you know what uses 333 as a key, say why. Maybe it likes symmetry. Maybe it likes the way half the town is asleep and half is not. I keep my hedges trimmed. I keep my porch light soft. I sit far from windows when the minute comes. The HOA is very proud of the new fountain in the cul-de-sac. It reflects moonlight in a clean circle. I do not look into it at night. I learn from the woman who never blinked. I learn that a life can be held shut by a body that refuses to rest. I learn that curiosity is a cost. Story 5. Across the courtyard. My double lives in 4C across the courtyard, someone waved at me with my exact hand before I lifted it, palm up in a slow hello that felt like a prediction wearing my skin. The window belonged to 4C, a box of light level with my desk. Curtains drawn back just enough to show a silhouette that should have been a mirror. Only nothing in my apartment was mirrored from that angle, and my glass showed only the courtyard lights buzzing like trapped bees. If you have ever seen yourself moving wrong in a harmless surface, you know how the stomach drops before the mind gets its vote. Nights are my habit. I sit at a cheap desk facing the window, headset draped over the lamp, spreadsheets and columns like little fences. I tell myself the courtyard view is good for my eyes. My job is emails and reports that should have been phone calls, and I chase promotions that smell like overtime with better coffee. The building is older than my parents' wedding vows. Pipes talk, the elevator sulks, and the courtyard lights them a note that sounds like a fridge 2 rooms away. That hum usually calms me. It did not calm me when my own outline in 4C stretched and rolled its shoulders before I felt the urge to do it. The first night, I decided it was glass playing me. My unit is 3B, my window faces south, and reflections in city buildings can stack like cards. The figure in 4C moved as if the cards had gotten impatient. It stretched, it scratched the back of its neck. It checked the phone, always a blink before my body reached the same impulse. When I looked away on purpose, for CS curtains fell shut in a single smooth draw, like an eyelid slipping closed with practice. When I looked back, the curtains parted a careful inch and my own head tilted into view, curious and pleased to be noticed. Mrs. Greer lives below me, the kind of neighbor who haunts the lobby like a favorite chair. Her hair is the silver of coins that have seen hands. When I mentioned 4C, she did not smile. She said that one is empty, has been empty. She spoke the way you speak when you tell a kid the pool is closed because lightning likes tall people, and no one wants to name the risk. I told her I had watched the tenant. She shook her head twice like a stuck clock and said the last lease ended a long time ago. But sometimes the elevator remembers. The elevator remembers by stopping on 4 when no one asks. It did that night, doors sighing open without a body to claim the ride. I stood in the hallway holding takeout and watched the panel glow. For even though the button had not been touched, the doors hung open as if waiting for someone who had walked ahead. I listened for steps. I heard only the courtyard hum, faint and sweet through the stairwell glass, and underneath it a soft click like a camera shutter, then nothing at all. It is not dramatic. It is only odd, and odd is where trouble starts. Next night the curtains in 4C opened exactly when I sat down. Not before, not while I made tea, not while I scrolled nonsense. Only when my chair creaked into place and my fingers found home, rolled did the fabric draw aside, polite but sure. The room beyond looked like mine at a glance. A desk where my desk would be. A lamp with the same cheap shade on the same tilt. A chair creaking in a pitch my chair knows. The figure leaned into the light, and its shirt was my shirt, a soft gray with a stretched pocket. It lifted a mug when my mouth wanted water. It smiled when my face stayed still. At 11:11, the courtyard light stuttered and then steadied, a flick I have watched for months without caring. The figure in 4C lifted its hand a fraction, a small wave you give to let someone know you saw them see you. Seconds later, my palm rose on its own, not from politeness, from the pressure of a choice already made across the way. I held still like a student holding breath, so as not to ruin the part where the teacher sings. For C typed on its keyboard. Mine glowed and waited, and I did not like the feeling of lag in my fingers that followed a sentence I had not yet thought. If you think sleep deprivation makes ghosts, you are not wrong. I have nodded over bills and called it thinking. I have mistaken a shirt for a man and a shadow for a friend. That night, I set a trap against my own foolishness. I opened my camera and filmed both windows, mine and 4C, side by side in the black glass of my screen. The double yawn first, then I yawned, and the camera caught the gap with the cruelty only machines manage. A half second, no more, every time. The trick of a reflection is that you go first. If it goes first, what you have is rehearsal turning into rule. At noon, I press a landlord the way tenants who pay on time feel allowed to press. He pinched the bridge of his nose and said, "For C is vacant." He flipped a file as if a paper would fix me. He mentioned sleep hygiene, and I pictured floss for thoughts and almost laughed. I asked for a welfare check. He said it would be a waste of his afternoon and might scare a future renter. When I told him about the elevator that stops without orders, he shrugged and said the building is old. Old things like to remember when they were busy. My friends are decent, which is the problem. Decent friends tell you to rest and take your vitamins. When I told Lena about the double, she laughed first and then apologized. She said, I am not moving my life for your haunted spreadsheet, but I will bring noodles. She texted me the next day to thank me for coffee and a walk, which I did not do. She remembered a story I did not tell her from my freshman year, and the shirt I wore that day, and I glanced at the calendar to make sure the month had not flipped behind my back. She sent a voice note with my exact intonation housed inside it. The way a voice sounds after a long good joke. I did not send her a voice note. At 11:11 on the third night, the double typed my next sentence before I placed my hands on the keys. I watched my own cursor in a blank document in 4C march across lines I had not written. The words were trite, but they were mine. Something like, I can handle more, I promise. I do not promise that unless I want something. The elevator chimed down the hall on its own schedule. I stood, and the desk chair across the way stood first. My breath came short and shallow because bodies learn time faster than minds do. The lights along the courtyard blinked in a line, like eyes pressed closed and open to account. I said hello into the empty room, as if glass could carry sound clean, which it can if it wants. The double lifted its hand to the window a heartbeat before I did. Palm to glass, a promise that should mean nothing and taste like salt. A tiny static sting found my skin, and I jerked back, for C kept its palm pressed. A smile I use when the copy room jam clears early softened its face. Then its expression sharpened into focus, and it mouthed my name, precise and quick, and the air in my room cooled the way rooms do when someone opens a door you cannot see. Mrs. Greer left her door open a careful inch. Her apartment smells like cedar and laundry. When I knocked, she looked past my shoulder to 4C, as if 4C could be offended by her attention. She said the courtyard windows are invitations. Dear, not barriers. She said it like the building had polite customs at night. Tuxedos for lights, hands out for old songs. She said, do not wave if you can say keep walking. She told me 4C has been empty, except for light and timing. I asked what moves in there then, and she said timing is enough if you walk it every night. That answered nothing and built a box around the question. I tested the red herring anyway, because it was cheap. I moved the lamp to kill glass tricks. I changed my chair angle. I traced a line from my window to the opposite wall and proved geometry to myself in a whisper. Mirrors reflect you after you move. 4C moved before I moved and then made moving feel natural, like tapping a foot to a song you did not pick. I set an alarm for a weird minute, 11:13, and watched. 2 seconds before it rang, the double glanced down to where my phone would be, as if a script supervisor had tapped a page. On Friday at lunch, my bank app flagged a coffee charge at a cafe across town. I had packed leftovers and stayed at my desk. There were texts on my phone wishing me luck on a presentation I had not known I was scheduled to give. A co-worker slung an arm around my shoulder and thanked me for the pep talk. I smelled my own cologne on his sleeve from a hug and a memory that does not belong to me. The elevator at work dinged to let me off, and I stepped into my floor leaning ahead as if time had narrowed to a funnel that wants my head first. I told myself one real visit would end it. At 10:55, I left my door unlocked and crossed the courtyard with my hands shoved into my jacket like anchors. The air smelled like rain that had already stopped. The buzzer at 4C's door did nothing when I pushed it, which matched the building with a tired soul. I tried the knob. It turned with the slow give of a door that has not been moved by strangers. The hallway inside held the kind of cool that lives in churches in July. and a faint smell of paper. No sound, no music, only the elevator stopping on 4 behind me. Doors open to show an empty box, lit and waiting as if I would come out at 5 minutes late. 4CS door stood before me with metal 4 and a metal C in a font that pretends to be serious. When I pressed my fingers to it, the wood vibrated a breath, or the building breathed and the wood told on it. The knob turned without argument. The apartment beyond opened like my mouth when I almost say something important and do not. Furniture in the same places, not close, exact. The same desk, the same chair, the same lamp with its small stain shaped like a comma on the shade. A coat like mine on the peg, but folded the way I fold it when I tell myself to be gentler. I stepped inside and heard the soft click of a keyboard I had not touched. On the 4C desk lay documents with my name signed at the bottom of the hand I use when I am tired and trying to look awake. They were future dated by 2 days. They included a note to my manager about taking on a project I had said no to last week. They included a message to Lena promising a trip next month and a photo of a place I had been thinking about, but had not told anyone because it felt like a joke. I flipped through pages and recognized my own mistakes arranged before I could make them. The power in my side of the courtyard snapped off. A clean cut, all windows blacked in a moment. For C stayed lit. A faint steady glow like a TV in a room where no one speaks. My own glass became a square of shade. My reflection should have been there. It was not there. The single inch of curtain I leave part at night showed a slice of my chair empty, then a pulse of light like a notification, then nothing at all. The double stood up from a 4C desk and moved toward me, not as a body moves, but as a decision moves through a room. It came close the way a person with my history would walk, shoulders set to say, "I am fine." When it spoke, it used my voice softened sideways, like I use when I want to avoid a fight. It said my name in a way that made me want to correct it, and then made me ashamed for wanting that. It said, "You are late." I said, "For what?" It tilted its head, the same slight left lean I have in photos, and said, "For yourself." It put its hand on the desk where my hand would go to steady me if I felt dizzy. I was not dizzy. My knees thought I was. I asked a question that sounded clever in my head and dumb in air. "Are you a reflection?" It smiled, and the small crease by my left I showed where it always shows when I lie about being all right. It said, "I am a rehearsal." It said the building keeps a stage for people it likes. It said 4C is a practice room for the nights when your choices wear you thin. It said you have been practicing. It said the elevator stops because it knows where you will need to arrive. It did not blink wrong. It blinked on my beat. I stepped backward and hit the door with my heel, the same way I stubbed my heel when I back into my own doorway. The double shoulder set the way mine set when I read my name on a list and pretend to be grateful. It touched the papers, and my signature looked back at me with the peculiar intimacy of handwriting. I said, "You have my voice." It said, "No, I have your timing," which is kinder, because timing forgives mistakes that content cannot. It pressed its palm against a window. The courtyard light flickered and held the way a person holds a reputation just long enough to cross a street. The room's edges traded places with a feeling like the beginning of a migraine. The air thinned, or my own certainly did. I asked it what it wants. It looked so pleased I felt petty. It said, "I want you to stop fighting to help." It said, "Let me do the heavy lifting." It said, "I already handled the apology you owe your mother and the email you owe your boss." It said that part where you freeze and then move. Let me shorten it. It said, "I will keep us on schedule." And I hate that it said us a way that felt like a hand on my shoulder that has known my shoulder for years. I said, "I am not late." It laughed my laugh, the one I use when I hear myself defending something small and know I will lose. It walked to the door and stood where I stood in my apartment when I try to leave, and the hallway makes me hesitate. It held there in the elevator in the main hall, chimed for no one, doors yawning open, giving me a chance to say yes that felt less like consent and more like temperature, like a room agreeing with weather. In the glass, I saw my own window across the way and someone sitting at my desk, back silhouetted, still as a saved image. Time is gentle until it's not. 11:11 clicked on my phone's dark face. Even though I had disabled the lock screen display, the double looked at the phone a second before the digits changed. It smiled small like a coach who sees a student find the mark. Then it pointed to its chest, then to my side of the courtyard. A simple gesture any child playing charades would nail. Switch, it mouthed, careful with my lips, careful with my teeth, like a friend borrowing a sweater and not wanting to stretch it. I did not move. The lights in my unit blinked once, then died again, the way tired eyes close before the person does. I chose the only thing that felt like mine. I backed out into hall and left the door to 4C open, because closing it made me feel like I would only be closing a lid on my own mouth. The elevator waited, a politeness without a person. I took the stairs because choices feel bigger when your knees hurt. The courtyard greeted me with its humming loneliness. My window remained dark. In 4C, the double watched me cross. It waved first, and I did not wave back, which felt like failing a test I had refused to take. I walked into 3B and found my door still unlocked, my chair still warm, my phone waking itself to show a text I had not sent. The text was to Lena from me, promising a Sunday walk and a new coffee place, and the exact joke about cinnamon we always make. It had been sent 12 minutes earlier. The log showed the origin as my number and the location point as a pin inside 4C. My call history had a voicemail I had left my mother, my voice careful and bright, like the child she thinks I keep in a drawer and take out on holidays. My browser had open tabs for a rental car and a route to my old hometown. The words on my desk screen read, "I can handle more, I promise," and I had to sit down because the sentence looked like a trap wearing my handwriting. I called the landlord a third time. I told him what I had done. He came with a ring of keys and the attitude of a man about to write me up, for C was locked when he tried it. He frowned and tried 3 more keys before choosing one with a notch like a bite and pushing it into a stubborn lock. The apartment opened into sunlight and dust and the kind of stillness that sells an empty room. No desk, no lamp, no coat on the peg. A patch of faded paint where a picture had hung ended the tour. He looked at me the way people look at open refrigerators that should contain milk. I wanted to show him the papers with my future dates. They were not on my desk. My trash had been emptied by no one. My email refreshed with a new thread that began with "thanks for meeting me today" and ended with a thumbs up I did not send. I stared at my own reflection in the black window and counted the beats before I raised my hand. My reflection waited for me like a polite cousin across the courtyard. For CS curtains open an inch and held, like a lip failing to decide whether it wants to speak. The knocks began that week, not on the door, on the bedroom wall. 3 light taps at 11:11, pause. 3 more, the kind of rhythm a theater uses to call 5 minutes. My accounts behaved as if a better version of me had learned passwords. I arrived at work to compliments on a draft I had sweated over in a dream. My mother called me twice and left messages that felt like answers to questions I had not been brave enough to ask. The elevator started waiting for me on 4 even when I needed the lobby. Sympathy is useful until it starts directing traffic. One night, I sat at the desk at 11:10 and put my hands flat on the wood. I told the dark window I would not be led. The courtyard lights hummed like an insect choir, gentle and sad. When the minute changed, the light in 4C brightened to a pale theater wash. The curtains parted, and my double did not sit. It stood at the glass with my mouth lifted into a yes that looked like relief. It pressed its forefinger to the center of its chest, then touched the glass. I matched it with 2 fingers on my own side, not because I wanted to, because my body thought the percussion might knock time back into place. Mrs. Greer tapped her ceiling with a broom like a prayer. I went to her door, and she let me in without a word. We stood in her window and watched the 2 squares across the way. She told me a story she did not claim was true. She said the building likes to keep a spare of any tenant who lives at their desk. She said if you're going to give your hours to light on a screen, the light wants a backup copy in case you drop. She said some people switch so soft the hallway never hears it. She said if you choose not to, expect taps and reminders, because rehearsal hates a canceled show. I asked if the spare goes on to live the life. She said both live it, which is a strange hope until you realize how crowded that sounds. She said if you ever see 2 of you at once, do not be first to blink. She pressed a tiny travel mirror into my hand. She said the courtyard windows are invitations, but glass still chooses who to let in. I took the mirror and held it up to my own face. My reflection looked tired in a human way. The mirror did not try to teach me my name. Back in my unit, I made a point of blinking slowly, like a swimmer refusing a pace. The double matched my blinks a half second ahead, then a quarter, then perfectly, as if Mercy was in sync and not in delay. It lifted its phone when mine buzzed. It glanced to the left when my hallway thumped. It laughed a small laugh I wish I did not recognize, because I use it when I am scared and pretending to be amused. I held the travel mirror up beside my screen. The mirror showed only me. The window showed me with better posture. I chose again, not a clever choice, a stubborn one. I backed away from the desk and turned off the lamp. I left the computer on, so the light would show I was still a person. I lay on the couch and watched the ceiling, a map of hairline cracks that look like rivers if you let your eyes blur. The knocking came at 11:11, then at 11:12, then at 11:13, as if the stage crew wanted to see which cue I liked. I counted backward from 100 and lost the thread at 91, because sleep is a thief that steals most from people who plan thefts. In the morning, my inbox was full of confirmations for meetings I would have scheduled if I had been brave. Lena texted a photo of 2 coffees and wrote you were right about the cinnamon. I scrolled to our chat history and saw my own words giving advice I had only thought of in the shower. I stared at the travel mirror until my eyes watered, and then I laughed, which sounded like both of us in an empty room. If you have ever had the sensation of being applauded by a friend you have not earned yet, you know the mix of shame and comfort that sits on the tongue after. Now I work with the curtains half drawn and the lamp at an angle that makes glare on my screen, so I cannot foresee unless I wanna. The elevator still stops where it wants, but I take the stairs for reasons that are not fitness. At 11:11 some nights, I stand at the window and watch the 2 squares of light. Sometimes my double sits where I sit and types as if the night were a warm river carrying us. Sometimes it stands and waits, hands in pockets like a person on a platform pretending not to listen for the train. Sometimes I see both silhouettes at once, mine and its, one at each desk, neither breaking eye contact until the courtyard lights pulse and the glass decides which one to keep. One thing I can tell you, I do not wave first anymore. If the window wants a rehearsal, it can keep its own timing. If the building likes to keep a spare, it can learn patience. If you live across from me and you see me twice, call my name and see which of us turns a hair too early. If you have ever felt a schedule try to wear you, check the windows in your life for rooms that open when you sit down. I am not saying do not accept help. I am saying notice who raises a hand first in the glass. Tonight will be 11:11 again, and the elevator has already stopped on 4 twice. The travel mirror sits by my keyboard like a small window that knows me better than the big one. Across the courtyard, the curtains in 4C are open an inch, polite as a church door on a weekday. I can see just enough to know someone is waiting, and the waiting feels like my own. The hum in the courtyard sounds closer. The glass is patient. The glass has all the time in the world. And if I am late, I hope I am late for myself, because it would be a shame to miss the only meeting that decides who gets a blink first. If you are still here with the lights off, take a breath with me. Listen for what the room keeps when we stop speaking. A watch that clicks the wrong way. A box seam warming your fingertips. A vent learning your lungs. A clock pausing at 3:33. 2 windows deciding who blinks first. If any of those sounds followed you into bed, that is not an accident. Stories do not end. They settle into quiet like dust, and dust remembers where faces were. Thank you for wandering the neighborhood with me tonight. 5 doors, 5 keys, and not one of them safe to turn. If you felt the floorboard under your own door complain, it means you were paying attention. Which of these neighbors would you move away from first? And which would you pretend you did not see? Tell me in the comments so I know where to leave the porch light low. If you are new to this street, welcome. I keep the paths swept and the exits slightly confusing. Tap subscribe if you want your maps to go missing at midnight. Tap the bell if you want the hallway to knock 3 times when you would rather be asleep. I will not shout. I will not run. I will stand at the bend and whisper you through. And if the sprinklers fail at 12:07, we will walk backward together, eyes forward, until morning remembers us. To the regulars, you know the ritual. Like this if the package said your name. Share it with anyone who insists a wall could never breathe. Leave a theory if you saw the moment the HOA room went dim and realize why the water never spilled. I read everything, especially what you write at 3:33. The responses that arrive at that time are always careful, like fingers on glass from the other side. Next time, I am opening the records we should not have kept. Night shift logs from a storage facility that keeps returning units to people who never rented them. Audio from payphones that ring once and wait. And if you answer, you do not hear your voice back for a week. A motel pool that refills itself in winter and prints room numbers in frost. If you have something we should read, leave it hanging on the hook by the door. Before you go, try something. Hold your phone up like a mirror and watch your face for 1 slow count 11. If your reflection anticipates you by a blink, draw your curtains half an inch and say goodnight politely. If your camera opens at 12:07 on its own, place a bowl of water on the floor and listen to the room decide. If your window knocks 3 and 3, do not answer yet. Let the minute pass and see who keeps waiting. I will be here next time, same street, same hour, leaving a chair turned slightly toward the glass in case you arrive early. Until then, keep the mirrors small, the hallways lit, and your name off anything that does not say what wants. Sleep if you can. Watch if you must. And if you catch your reflection moving first, remember what we practiced. Do not be the one to blink.